Hi everybody, welcome to part 3 in my video series on bikes and mopeds from the 1970s and the 1980s. And in this video what we're going to see is one of Brent Fielder's other bikes in his collection. This was my first moped in the early 80s. It was an old SS50 Honda. Now there was two versions of this, the Mark 1 and the Mark 2. The Mark 1 had only a 4-speed gearbox and a drum brake and some cosmetic differences at the front. Very slow moped, and then they outrated it a little bit and they put an extra gear in it. They rubber mounted the handlebars and they also gave it an extra gear, but even so it was still a very slow moped. But that was my first bike, and then I ended up getting a Fizzy after that. So let's have a look at Brent's other bike. This is an Honda SS50 which he's actually restored himself, and he'll tell you the story on how he got it, and he'll also tell you the modifications he's made to it. So here we go, this is Brent Fielder and his Honda SS50. Enjoy.
This was the first model, 4-speed gearbox, drum brake. They later brought out a slight updated one, different colour petrol tank with a disc brake and an extra speed in the gearbox and a little bit more poke. Bit of an alteration to the carburetor, but this one only had 2.5 horsepower. This actual bike was my mate Steve Gill's bike back in 1973, and I had a mobilette, and when he turned up on this, wow, what a difference, you know. It's all these little knobs and levers all over it. But when I got my Pirelli Tiger, this suddenly seemed all that because it was so slow. They were really reliable and really well made, but when you're 16, you're not thinking about reliability and well made. You're just thinking about, I want the biggest, fastest bike I can get. And unfortunately, these didn't quite do it, but they're a brilliant little bike. And I didn't see my mate Steve for about 20 odd years, and I was in a pub one night back in my hometown in Goole, and I bumped into him and I just said, "You still got your SS50, Steve?" for a joke, and he said, "Yeah, it's still in the garage." So I ended up, cut a long story short, I bought it off him, restored it up a bit, and what a disappointment. The engine was just totally gutless, and I couldn't get over about 25 with my vast bulk. So I put this bigger engine in, which is a 110cc, and it's a genuine 65 mile an hour job now. Although the brakes and the handling and the suspension at 65 mile an hour, the engine is.
It's a 5-speed model, more powerful, or is it just cosmetic changes?
No, it did have a little bit more power. They altered the carb a little bit, and they give it the extra speed in the gearbox, and they were definitely a better bike for it. But it was too late by then. The Yamaha FS1E was king of the street for the Japanese bikes, and the Pirellis and the Fantics were king of the Italian mopeds.
So I think the FS1E, for example, I think that averaged about 4.5 brake horsepower.
That's right, yeah. The FS1E again was a really well made bike compared to the Pirelli stuff at the time. Everything, all the fittings were nice, everything was properly made, everything fitted together well, and these things, they just kept going. They just kept going forever. No matter what you ran them on, no matter what petrol it was, paraffin even, they just never stopped.
Again, I mean, these mopeds, for example, as I say, this was one of my first mopeds. In fact, it was the first moped I had.
Oh yeah.
And no one I can remember having one ever bothered tuning them.
No. The only things they ever did to them was you could stick a C70 barrel on the end, and a few alterations. You could come up with a slightly big bore, and that did make a difference. But the guys I knew who tried to do that, their bikes kept blowing up, so it wasn't not really recommended in them days.
Well, basically, back in the early 70s, I mean, sports moped was basically dominated by the 2-stroke engine. This being a 4-stroke engine, if there was any benefits to a teenager to owning one of these?
Well, they were a little bit cheaper to start with to buy. They were about 170 quid at the time. Pirelli's was 200. The main thing about the economy on them was the 4-stroke engine. You'd get about 150 miles to the gallon out one of these, which is incredible if you went steady. And the best I've got out my Pirelli Tiger has been 100 miles to the gallon, so a little bit more economical, cheaper to run, and you didn't constantly have to take them back to the shop to get them repaired because they just kept going. This one, when my mate had finished with it, his dad used it for going to work on for about 10 years, every day. I mean, it was pretty rusty when I got it, but it just never let him down.
Was it a complete bike, obviously? It had
yeah.
chopped about and...
Complete bike, but all covered in rust. Every bit of it covered in rust. And Steve's dad, bless him, had covered most of it in gloss paint to try and hold the rust off over the years. But amazing. It still went. We pulled it out of his garage and it had been stood there for 10 years, put a drop of petrol in, and it started straight up, just like that.
For the sake of keeping things original, did you actually keep the original engine in case you sell on any stage? Or?
Yeah, I did. I actually restored it and put the original engine in it, but when I went for my test ride, I realised that I was going to be overtaken by milk floats and people on push bikes, so I decided on the bigger engine.
Right, with regards to keeping these SS50s on the road and refurbishing them, for example, we know There is a Yamaha website for the fizzes. There are various websites that cater for other types of moped. I don't think I've actually seen one for the Honda. Is there one, or?
I don't think there's one devoted entirely to it, although there are people in the Sports Moped Club who's got them. But the best source of spares for Hondas, any Honda really from the 70s, is Dave Silver spares. I think he's in Leicester in Suffolk, and I've had quite a few bits of him. And they're great. Those guys just know all the parts numbers. They've got most of them in their head. They don't even need the microfiche numbers. And if you want a new exhaust or some new bits and bobs, they've generally got most of it in stock on the shelf, which is incredible. Not just for little Hondas, for the bigger ones as well.
So, I mean, what are we looking at for an SS50? We know roughly the price of your Pirellis, what they command now. I don't think these are as popular, but they have obviously still got a market. I mean, what can you expect to pay for a restored one of these then?
Well, you never get back what you pay in restoring them. They're cheaper to buy because they were less popular and less people want them. People want the fastest, the mopeds they had when they were 16. You can get a decent one, an original one, for about 800 or 900 quid. A restored one, it all depends. I mean, how long's a piece of string? Depends how good the restoration job is, depends what it's had poured into it. It'll cost you the same to restore this as it will to restore a Pirelli, but it won't be worth as much at the end. But if you want one to buy and run and keep, then you don't think about the cost of them.
Right, so this is obviously your SS50, Brent, with obviously a bigger engine in it, but anyway, let's hear this one start up.
Okay then, Japanese sophistication, ignition key. Didn't get that on a Pirelli, I'm afraid. Ignition on, choke on, petrol on, and I'll bet you this will start first turn.
How was that for you?
Perfect, is that alright?
Yeah, perfect. Looking good.
Don't let anybody ever tell you SS50s are slow.
Well, that's got a 110cc engine in it.
It has a little bit, yeah. It just gives you that bit more poke, as you probably noticed. Brilliant.
Well, there you go. That was the Honda SS50, and I think you'll agree that it's a lovely, solid-looking bike, but not very much cult status attached to it, although they have increased in value over the last few years. So I hope you're enjoying this video series, and please look out for the next one, and don't forget to rate, comment and subscribe on my videos if you do like what you're seeing. So there you go. Thanks very much indeed for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Bye for now. See you in the next video. See you later. Bye.